In the name of God, Amen. On the third day, in the year of our Lord 1345, I, Geoffrey Luttrell, Knight, Lord of Irnham, do make my will in this manner. First, I leave my soul to Mary and all his saints, and my body to be buried by the high altar of the blessed Andrew Apostle. I give and bequeath to the clerks reciting the Psalter 40 shillings. In the first programme, we looked at the Luttrell Psalter, the great illuminated manuscript made for the Lincolnshire knight Sir Geoffrey Luttrell. In this programme, we're going to look at some of the religious pictures in its pages. We'll also see what we can learn about warfare and about food and feasting in the Middle Ages. As we've seen, a lot of the pictures deal with the daily lives of the peasants who worked on Sir Geoffrey's farmland. Later scenes deal with the preparation of food for a family banquet. In the heat and sweat of the kitchen, we see a team of cooks hard at work chopping and mashing. Over a blazing fire, a servant is busily turning a huge spit on which 2 chickens and a young pig are being roasted. Next to him, his companion rakes the hot embers. At a great chopping block, a cook, cleaver in hand, has just cut in half what is probably meant to be another suckling pig, though it does look rather like a dog. The cook stands glaring, threateningly, it seems, at his assistant, who's preparing chickens for roasting. At the table next to the cooks, a servant is carefully pouring wine into goblets. 2 other servants, in smart, knee-length tunics, are about to carry the food through to the hall. The sequence of images carries through like a comic strip to the next page, where Sir Geoffrey is sitting surrounded by his family at a long trestle table. Like the picture of Sir Geoffrey in armour, this is a way of displaying the family's wealth. The wall behind them is draped with a rich tapestry embroidered with the Luttrell arms, and the table is covered with silver plate. Geoffrey sits goblet in hand at the centre of the table, staring out at the reader. He wears what must have been a fashionable hat, perhaps made of velvet, with side flaps, which is turned up like an enormous pair of ears. His wife, Agnes, sits on his right hand, and on his left is Beatrice, his daughter-in-law. Next to her sits her husband, Andrew, who will one day inherit the family estates. On the left of the page, bearing 2 dishes, is what is probably Sir Geoffrey's pantryman and butler, John of Colne. In Sir Geoffrey's will, John of Colne was to be left 10 marks and one of his master's robes. Notice that he wears a purse on his belt. It was his job to pay the other servants and to stock up the larder. In front of the table, kneeling before his master, is Sir Geoffrey's cupbearer, who would pour out the wine. Beside Sir Geoffrey sit 2 friars. These might have been the family chaplains, Brother Robert and Brother John. One of their duties was to chant the psalms in the Psalter. Although they're sitting at the same table as the family, it could be that their vows of poverty forbid them from eating meat, in which case the white objects on the dish in front of them are probably hard-boiled eggs. The meal seems to be a special feast. It could be to celebrate the bringing in of the harvest, when it was the Lord's duty to provide a feast for his tenants. On the other hand, it could be Christmas time. We can't be sure. Everything on the table would have been produced on Sir Geoffrey's land. The The bread would have come from corn grown in his fields and ground in one of his mills. The pigs would have foraged for acorns in his woods, and the hens would have been fattened by his grain. The food eaten by the family would have been much richer and more varied than that of the peasants. The Luttrells would have enjoyed geese, those that weren't carried off by foxes, as well as wild boar, venison and rabbits. The rabbits, which bred freely and ran wild, would have been chased and caught by ferrets and trained hunting dogs. One picture shows a cherry tree with a boy climbing in its branches, stealing the fruit. Alongside, shaking his stick, is a farmer. If caught, the boy would be severely punished. Anyone found poaching in Sir Geoffrey's parkland would have been fined £10, an enormous sum of money in the Middle Ages. Hunting on the estates was the privilege of the family and their guests. A favourite sport of the wealthy was falconry. There are two images of falconers in the Psalter, in both cases hunting on horseback. Notice that the falconers wear heavy gauntlets to protect their left hand from being attacked by the falcon, and that attached to the bird's legs are jesses, leather straps used to tie them to their master's wrists. Another sport of the aristocracy was jousting. One picture seems at first sight to show a tournament, but the figure on the right, the one who looks as though he's been knocked off his horse, has a blue face and Arabic features. It could be that he's a Saracen, and that this is a scene from the Crusades. Preparation for war is illustrated in several pictures of bowmen. Those aiming at the target are using the longbow, the traditional English weapon which was to defeat the French at Agincourt in 1415. Others are loading crossbows. The crossbow is a more powerful weapon, but one which takes longer to load. One of the crossbowmen seems, by his shaven head, to be a monk. What, we may wonder, is a monk, sworn to a peaceful life, doing with a crossbow? Other bowmen appear in an image of a great warship crossing the ocean full of armed soldiers. Could they be crusaders setting off for the Holy Land? Or could they, like Sir Geoffrey's son, be English soldiers crossing the Channel to fight the French? We've no way of knowing. There's another boat in the Psalter, and it's a rather puzzling one. It's a rowing boat with 4 oarsmen rowing up the edge of the page, while 2 others are pulling the boat along like a barge. This seems a perfectly normal scene until you realise that the 2 men on the bank are pulling in the opposite direction to the oarsmen. The boat, if it's moving at all, is travelling as slowly as the giant snail at the bottom of the page. This might have had some hidden meaning, now lost to us. These sometimes puzzling images of medieval life are interwoven with scenes from the Bible and the lives of the saints.